Hi, my name is Wolfgang Oskan and I'm going to be talking about the research that I've carried out in preparation for my documentary. This is called the Research Commission. I will undertake research to do with design, marketing and production for my documentary. I will be targeting a wide demographic. I will be targeting teenagers to the elderly, all ethnicities and all economic backgrounds. I will be looking into the distinction between primary and secondary research and how I gathered my information between the two. Primary research is information that I've gathered through interviews, photographs, newspaper eyewitness accounts, and to be more specific, research that is more personal in the way that is gathered. While as secondary research is information that has been compiled from outside sources like YouTube, Google, TV, books and magazines. These sources are less personal in the way that it's gathered. You could do it through the computer, basically. I will also look at the difference between quantitative and qualitative research. Quantitative research is based on mathematical charts, statistics, numerical information, and all-round number-based information, which corresponds with the word quantity, which means amount. Qualitative research, on the other hand, is more creative in its interpretation. So there's no facts and figures, it's just pure description in its information, and it's left up to the individual to make up their own minds. This is a list of ways that you can gather useful and focused information, focused material. So we have the internet, YouTube and Google, Instagram, and governmental information sites. Newspaper, The Guardian, Metro, Tottenham Journal. Surveys, one-on-one interviews, group interviews, quick questionnaires, and what type of interviews with police and whatnot, victims of what's happened, or television documentary makers like Reggie Yates and Anthony Bourdain, which is sadly passed in the last few days. Design research is basically going to influence how it looks and feels, the content of my documentary, and the primary research for my design research was taken from statistics and interviews, which we have a lot of through the newspaper and YouTube. Below is a mix of statistics and interviews. This one is from the BBC, which is statistics, and YouTube for in-depth interviews and styles. The secondary research for my design research came from statistics from The Sun, so showing exactly who got attacked and what happened and whatnot. And the second is also statistics from BBC. Basically, what shows in the months of February and March, the murder rate has surpassed that of New York's. So, market research, on the other hand, is research that basically, if finding a market for your proposed research, I basically looked into statistical information on knife crime, revealing the attitudes of people and whether they are talking about it. conducted a questionnaire and survey to get some feedback within the class, and other things like finding out if there's a market for my proposed documentary. So the primary research for my market research is basically an interview. Below is a link which has a huge effect on my documentary and me, particularly because it was set in Tottenham, North London, which is where I have lived for the past 24 years. It shows how random these attacks can be. Secondary research for my market research is that of the Mayor of London, showing his true feelings and thoughts, and what he has basically said that he's going to invest £1.5 million into communities for the next 4 years. There's another clip that's very similar to my documentary. It basically has people talking about their thoughts and views on what happened since the start of the year. The murder rate has increased dramatically. The production research is to clarify how I go about producing the actual documentary and making it look technically good. Whilst looking at YouTube, I found techniques that apply to my own in the form of person-to-person interviews, and how I could utilize this technique to make into a documentary. Before doing this documentary, I have thought about it for several weeks, talking to like my brother, my older brother, talking about it in class, whether or not it's good or whether it's not, it's bad or whatever, like the thoughts and opinions of people basically. I would use the basement of the Soho College to conduct my interviews. I've chosen this place because it is mainly media students, and basically they are much more open to being interviewed, because they would also need to do interviews within their work and coursework. So it's like a give-give type of atmosphere. These 6 people is the people that I've interviewed, and what their background is basically. Katie, a tutor of ours, middle-aged white female from a middle class background, and I go on explaining their backgrounds, very short. Here basically I have wrote down three questions that I would apply for each person, and within these questions I will ask smaller questions which will go about making my documentary more fluent and much more easy to, basically more smoother. I've used a camera, tripod, sound recorder, headphones and the mic to conduct these researches basically. I will be recording on Thursdays. Basically that's when we have Matt Taylor to do with the documentary and how all of this from 2 to 5 every Thursday. And of course I will do a waiver for each of these participants, so I have the rights to actually publish the work. And I have had input from Isaac, another team member of ours in our group, with the sound recording and whatnot. Primary research in my production research, like I've said, I was talking to my older brother and he said that instead of doing a documentary about something, you should do a documentary about the people's opinions instead, which could be more diverse in its whole entity. I've also put down a couple of books to do with research, the secondary research in my production research, basically how to make a documentary, how to conduct your ways, and basically in this task I will be talking about the validity and the accuracy of my research. I've taken from news outlets and other sources of information. Basically, they get their facts and statistics from from Scotland Yard, which I'm happy to present their work as an extension of mine, because the facts and figures are true and valid because it's come from Scotland Yard, basically. And for each of my research, I've put down design research and what type of techniques I've used to make sure visibility and accuracy. So here we have the reason I know the research is valid because BBC is an impartial, independent news source that receives its statistical facts from New Scotland Yard, basically. That's what it is. For my market research, I've looked into Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, and his views on youth crime. And because of the status of the Mayor of London, him lying would not be in his best interests and whatnot. So I know its truth of accuracy because of his status and because he is the mayor, basically. For my production research, for each of the books contained, I've actually cross-referenced and cross-correlated between the two, making them basically they've had the same information in, not really the same information, but information that could be seen in other books, and basically you could see the content. News stations and articles, and although being, there are a number of news articles, and although being biased in some of their political intentions, the facts and numbers and statistics cannot lie because that would make them uncredible to the masses that actually do go out and read these papers and whatnot. YouTube also has an infinite amount of clips. Basically, I have sifted through them and looked into which things that I could use. For example, I can differentiate between facts and all of that, and found in reliable sources like BBC News, and fiction from the average person posting their own views. So basically I went straight to the source. I went to BBC instead of people basically talking about their experiences. What research methods that I have used, I will be assessing the accuracy and validity of my research on facts and figures. There are 5 main categories which the validity of my work will fall under, which is focused, useful, relevant, accurate, and valid. And I have put the word in each of my documentary participants and what they have basically gave me, which was relevant, useful, and in the case of Isaac Charles, it was focused because he gave me more feelings than he did with numbers and whatnot. Oh. So far, I have used the evidence from a wide range of sources, statistics from BBC News and visual clips and whatnot. I am happy because I have cross-referenced my information to double check that the information is solid. I would also like to say that because of the type of news is becoming more frequent, the news outlets that I get from are printing less and less each time. So it's actually becoming harder for me to get this type of information where it's more frequent and whatnot. I've also stayed clear of Wikipedia because any one person can go onto the site and change facts into jargon and unreliable opinion. So my conclusion is that this type of crime is getting worse and worse. And by not talking about it, will bring about an age where knife crime and youth gangs will become the norm. As the interviews go, I thought it would be more dynamic in the form of people expressing more emotion and fear in the younger generation. That's what I thought would happen, but it wasn't actually the case. I've also considered the legal requirements, which fall under three main sections: the law of the land, rules and regulations, and the code of conduct. And here we have things that basically talk about libel and the laws of discrimination, and rules and regulations being more Ofcom based, like having content that's violent only after 9 p.m. when the kids are fast asleep. Like, it's aimed at adults. The last is the code of conduct, which we must all abide by. As a documentarian, we cannot have bias in any form, to have fairness to do with police, and not trying to change one thing to another. And all documentarians have to abide by this. So my evaluation, what worked well and what did not, while shooting the actual documentary, I've had a combined worth of 17 minutes, which basically made it extremely hard to edit because of views. I had to put the right views in which way and how they answered it, and basically create a solid documentary. And this took basically 9 hours in the space of 6 days to edit, which was the hardest thing. It was so energy consuming. I met challenged to do with who I should interview, because on the day it was basically this person available and that person available. When I actually asked to do a documentary about someone, they was not in college, and basically things had to change rapidly so I could actually make something. What did go well was that everyone had an open mind, and I met real thoughts and feelings from my participants, which I was extremely happy to encounter, because then I could make something. I also had great ease doing the introduction and conclusion of my documentary with Matt Taylor, which is more to do with actual producing and the work with cameras. How I can improve a schedule for the people that I would have wanted to interview instead of the people that I resorted to interview. So I would make a proper schedule and make them clearly understand what day and time I need them. What I can take from this assignment is that I am able and confident about myself to produce a documentary with only help here and there by the tutors. I have also realized that the hardest part of the documentary, particularly in my case, was to do with the editing. What I can do for similar projects is to bear in mind that the questions will make or break the actual content of the documentary. And I should bear in mind that the editing will be harder than what I first thought of, and in line make the questions more fluid so I could do better editing basically. And these are my references. Thank you.